Hey there and welcome back to another Miraculous Ladybug video. And today I want to talk about the character of Lila and her role, or really her lack of a role so far in Season 4. Do you remember in Season 3 when it seemed like Lila was being set up for big things in the 4th season? When it looked like she'd have a much bigger role to play, both as a minor episode level antagonist, and then also on a much wider scale as she schemed and plotted alongside Gabe and Shadowmoth? How it very much looked like she was poised to take up the Chloe role as the human antagonist that Marinette has to frequently contend with. How she was the villain that you loved to hate, who would lie and cheat and steal and scheme, who managed to wrap the whole class around her little finger and isolate Marinette for the first time ever. Who managed to actually make Adrian, of all people, angry enough to yell at and threaten somebody. Who actually managed to forge an alliance with Gabriel Agreste, a dude who famously hates interacting with anybody, let alone his son's annoying classmates. Pepperidge Farm remembers. But here we are, having seen almost the entirety of Season 4, and she's hardly even appeared, let alone been an actual relevant character. I mean, let's look at her appearances in all 3 seasons up to now for a really brief reference. In Season 1, she appears as the title villain in the finale. So while she wasn't present throughout the immediate introductions and all that, she's taken the helm as arguably the more important villain of the season, aside from Hawkmoth, obviously. In the 2nd season, she appears again, only briefly, but this time in a way more significant role in the first 2-part finale in the show's history, and became the immediate catalyst for the entirety of that major battle. Then, in Season 3, she's promoted even higher, and not only appears in the background of a fair chunk of episodes, but then has a pretty major role in about 7 or so. And that's pretty good for a minor villain in my opinion. It's just enough to make you hate her guts, but not too much that she becomes a bit too stale, like Chloe. And honestly, based on the fact that we know there's going to be a new Hawkmoth at some point in the future, and that her storyline revolved around trying to worm her way into Gabe's inner circle, it kind of made it seem like she was being set up for a much bigger role going forward, maybe as the new Hawkmoth. That she'd have her story slowly unveiled over the coming season in the same way that we saw the storylines of Chloe and Gabe play out. Sometimes they'd simply appear as the antagonistic character who gets somebody akumatized. But then sometimes you get to see them behind the mask and see their inner thoughts and feelings. I mean, Gabe started off as the generic bad guy and angry rich dad, who we then learn is a deeply lonely and disturbed man, desperately trying to bring back the love of his life so they can all be a family again, and is willing to do anything, including wiping out the universe, to make it happen. Chloe started off as a generic rich mean girl, and then over time we learned that her dad spoils her because her mum is emotionally distant and borderline abusive. And then this habit of getting spoiled, combined with her adopting elements of her mum's personality to try and make her love her, turned her into an awful person. So you could argue that whilst Lila was also pretty generic during seasons 2 and 3, she had potential. I mean, we saw that her mum obviously didn't have that much time for her, so already we had some hints of things below the surface. So surely that would mean Season 4 would see us peel back the layers somewhat and see a different side of the character that explains why she is the way she is, and gives her actions, motivations, and interactions with the other characters a whole lot more depth. Depth that would set her up as an adversary that people would actually want to watch, as opposed to a lame villain who does what she does simply because she absolutely sucks as a person. That kind of black and white writing is really lame. Villains need depth. Otherwise, why should I even care when the hero actually gets one over on them? Why should I want them to lose beyond, villain bad? So you could definitely say I was pretty optimistic about her character coming into the season. I mean, I think a lot of people were actually a bit disappointed by how Season 3 ended up being. But then Season 4 comes out and it's swinging for the fences, and it went really well. And I mean, I think it's still doing really well if you ask me. Is everything perfect? No, but it's doing the job. But then I was sitting around one day and I thought, wait, what about Lila? What's she been up to? How many episodes are left? Is she going to matter at all? What's going on? And then what do we get? Basically nothing at all except Lila sitting in as a background character. Seriously, has she even had any dialogue whatsoever? I can't even remember. She's gone from being one of the more important villains of the show to a complete nobody who gets no development, no story whatsoever. And don't get me wrong, I think Season 4 on the whole has been pretty decent. There's a lot of good episodes and a lot of good story progression. But then on the other hand, there's been a lot of misses too. I mean, did we really need so much Chloe involvement this season? And then there's been a ton of Alia episodes this season. You couldn't somehow squeeze Lila into any of those storylines? I mean, she originally pretended to have the Fox Miraculous. The story is literally staring you in the face. Write it! And do we really need goddamn Mr. Pigeon making his billionth appearance? The charms could have been introduced using literally any storyline ever. So, no excuses for that one. I mean, this season's been about development. Developing Marinette and Adrian and Gabriel into well-rounded main heroes and villains. Building up characters like Alia to have more important roles going forward. Introducing new important characters like Zoe. Setting up future story points and plot threads like the famous Adrian Felix Sentimonster conundrum. And yet here we are, with Lila having done jack shit for the entire season until they shoehorn her into the finale and act as if she's some super important character who's always out to ruin Marinette's life. Cause, really? She isn't. What has she done to her lately? Nothing. I mean, at this point, even Felix has had more development than her, and he's appeared in one episode this season, and he lives in a different city to the rest of the cast of characters. And I mean, I really hate to just try and tear the writing to shreds, but this is truly atrocious, and this kind of reeks of changing things on the go. Honestly, I'll probably make a video on it after season 4 ends, because there's just so much more to discuss than just Lila. But you can tell, simply by her position in season 3, and the fact that she's slated to appear in the 2-part finale to season 4, ominously titled The Last Attack of Shadowmoth, that she's meant to be an important character and she's going to have a lot of future relevance. But I think the show simply got sidetracked by a lot of different decisions and shifts in creative direction. Like, seriously, based on season 3, who the hell would have expected that we were going to suddenly have a huge season-expanding story arc that revolves around Alia becoming Marinette's closest confidant and discovering her secret? Or that Chloe was going to randomly have a half-sister appear out of nowhere to have her own little mini-arc because the creators decided they preferred to have Chloe as a villain, but still wanted a relevant character for the Be Miraculous. So, they created Nice Chloe. Seriously, apart from her design, she feels like she was simply ripped straight out of the original concept where Chloe was supposed to be friends with Alia and Marinette. And I wouldn't be surprised if these three become a little bit of a trio by season 5. And then we were also told no filler. But come on, we can see that that is not true either. There are plenty of episodes you can look at and think, really? That's what they decided to go with? Stories that don't push the plot forward at all. Really, I mean, remember Simple Man? Dank. Anyway, this means that we're expected to take Lila seriously as some sort of antagonistic force against our heroes, but why? She hasn't done anything at all, and yet she's going to be magically relevant for the finale. It feels unearned, and honestly, I'm not really all that invested in her character. I just don't care enough about her. And if you ask me what I want to see in the finale, based on this season as a whole so far, it's literally more Cat Noir and Ladybug tension, more Sentimonster mystery, and more Felix versus Gabe for those damn rings. For the season as a whole, those are the plot points that have the most value for a compelling finale. Lila just doesn't. But that's not to say her character sucks. With the right story, she could shine as a villain. But she just hasn't had enough time. I mean, look at how much screen time they've given Gabe this season. And I'm talking Gabe, not Shadowmoth, the man behind the mask. We've gone into his motivations and his relationships in way more depth, and it's made him a way more compelling and three-dimensional character. I mean, look what a single episode has done for Felix's character. And look how they've made Alia shine this season. Hell, even Marinette's had significant development, and she never gets development. But then you look at Lila, clearly being positioned for bigger things, and she's getting nothing. Nothing at all. And it just feels so wasteful. Wasteful because her character could have been so much more. There have been so many opportunities for her to get a little bit more focus, but it's been ignored time and time again. At the very least, the very minimum, if you didn't want to change any of the episodes too much in terms of plot, she should have been in the episode Gabriel Agreste. It would have just felt right, especially if it was her and not Chloe that was trying to show Gabe the video, considering they joined that weird pact thing to keep Adrian safe. I mean, Chloe already got enough story in the 2 Zoe episodes. Did she really need to factor into this one too? Especially since it feels like the Chloe-Marinette rivalry is just so one-sided now. It just feels like Chloe's trying to start things and Marinette could not care less. Feels awkward. At least with Lila, you can see that Marinette full-on hates her guts completely. But she pities Chloe, so it's less interesting. And hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they have no real plans for Lila beyond this finale and she's never going to be relevant again, so it doesn't matter. But I doubt it. It kind of feels like they've bitten off more than they can chew and have too many characters to deal with, which means a lot of characters have fallen by the wayside this season as a select few have gotten developed in way more depth. And that's okay, because it happens in a lot of shows. But the problem here is that one of those forgotten characters seems to be one that's poised for a much larger role in the future, and thus, probably could have used all the development she could get. But, as always, those are just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think about Lila's character? Think it's been a bit bungled in season 4? Or are you glad she hasn't featured all that much? I'm curious to hear your thoughts, so make sure to leave a comment and let me know.